All right, welcome. In this explainer, we're going to tackle a question that shows up all the time on IGNOU exams. This vicious circle that connects poverty and environmental destruction. Let's break down exactly how to craft a top-scoring answer.
Okay, so let's get right into it. This is a classic exam question for a really good reason. It gets to the very heart of a massive global challenge. We're going to walk through it step by step, so you can explain it with total clarity and confidence.
So, to really get this, we've got to start with one half of the loop. How does poverty itself actually lead to environmental damage? To understand the full circle, this is where we begin.
Okay, here's a term you have to use in your answer: the poverty-environment nexus. Now, this isn't just some fancy phrase, it's the key to the whole concept. It shows you understand this isn't a one-way street. It's a self-perpetuating loop, a feedback trap, where each problem makes the other one worse.
So how are you going to remember all this in the exam hall? Well, I've got a super simple and really relevant mnemonic for you. To remember the 4 main ways poverty drives this damage, just remember the word fuel. So what does FUEL actually stand for? It's focus on survival, uncertainty and risk, exploitation of the commons, and a lack of alternatives. Let's dig into each one. First up, F is for the intense focus on survival. This leads to what economists call short time horizons. Think about it. If your family is hungry right now, are you really thinking about soil health 10 years from now? Of course not. Survival today has to come before sustainability tomorrow. Next, U is for uncertainty and risk. When you're living on the edge, you just can't afford to gamble. It's like this. You can take a small, guaranteed meal today from overusing a resource, or you can hope for a bigger meal next week by saving it. When you're poor, you take the guaranteed meal every single time. The risk is just too high. E stands for the exploitation of commons. Now we're talking about things everyone can access: the local forest for wood, the river for water, common land for grazing animals. Since poor families often don't have private land or resources, these shared spaces get overused and eventually they get depleted, leading to deforestation and erosion.
And finally, L stands for a lack of alternatives. This one is a really stark example. Imagine all the firewood is gone. What do? You might be forced to burn animal dung or leftover crops just to cook. But wait, that's the stuff you're supposed to put back in the soil to make it fertile. So by cooking today's meal, you are literally making next year's harvest smaller. It's a brutal choice.
Okay, so we've got the first half of the circle down. Poverty leads to environmental damage. Now let's complete the loop. How does that damaged environment turn around and make people even poorer?
We can break this down into 2 main ideas, and you should too in your answer. Think of them as Hypothesis 1 and Hypothesis 2. H1 is all about the direct damage to people's health, and H2 is all about the loss of productivity, basically losing your ability to make a living. Let's zoom in on H1, the health crisis. It's pretty direct, right? Dirty water means diseases, like cholera. Burning wood and dung inside the home creates this horrible indoor smog, leading to serious lung problems. And what happens when you get sick? You can't work. You get hit with medical bills. It just pushes your family deeper and deeper into poverty.
All right, on to H2, the loss of productivity. And this is a super important point because it happens in 2 key ways. First, by literally taking away your time, and second, by making the natural resources themselves less valuable.
This chart shows that first concept, labor diversion, perfectly. Just look at it. As the forests get thinner and the water sources dry up, who has to go farther to get them? It's often women and children. They end up spending more and more hours every single day just collecting fuel and water. And you can see it right there on the chart. Every hour added to collecting resources is an hour stolen from income-earning work or, and this is crucial, stolen from a child's education. The second part of H2 is that the resources themselves just stop producing as much. It's a simple, brutal equation. Polluted rivers mean fewer fish to catch and sell. Worn-out soil means smaller harvests. The very environmental assets that people rely on for their livelihood are giving them less and less, which directly cuts their income. Okay, so we've seen how poverty hurts the environment and how a hurt environment deepens poverty. Let's put it all together now and see this whole vicious circle in action. And here it is. This is the trap. You start with poverty. That forces people to think only about today. That leads to overusing resources, which causes environmental damage. That damage then makes people sick and makes it harder to earn a living, which leads to, you guessed it, even deeper poverty.
and the cycle starts all over again, only this time it's even harder to escape.
Okay, so defining the problem is one thing, but the big question, the one you need to address in your answer, is how in the world do we break out of this? What's the solution?
Well, there's no single magic answer. The key takeaway here is that it has to be a coordinated three-pronged attack. You need to tackle the economic part with new jobs, the institutional part by giving people rights to their land, and the environmental part with actual conservation projects. You can't just do one. They are all connected. You have to do them all at once.
All right, we've gone through a lot. Let's boil it all down to one final slide for your revision. Seriously, if you remember anything, remember this slide.
This is your ultimate exam checklist. First, the core concept, the poverty environment nexus. Got it? Good. For the first half of the circle, how poverty causes damage, remember our mnemonic, FUEL, and talk about short time horizons. Here's a pro tip for a high-scoring answer. You can call the initial poverty exogenous, meaning it comes from outside, and the poverty it creates endogenous, meaning it's born from the cycle itself. Then, for the other half of the circle, use hypothesis H1 for health and hypothesis H2 for productivity, and don't forget to mention labor diversion. Finally, wrap it all up with the multi-pronged solution. If you hit all these points, you are golden.
And I'll leave you with one final thought to chew on. We talked about that institutional solution, right? So just imagine, what if we could empower local communities by giving them real ownership and control over their own resources? Could that one single change actually flip this whole thing? Could it turn this vicious circle into a virtuous one? Something to think about. All right, good luck with your preparation.